Do you believe in fate, Speaker? Marshal Alec Martin of the Space Fleet asked Tara, a question that caught her off guard because she had just stepped off of his flagship. Her only interactions with Marshal Alec Martin of the Space Fleet had been formal greetings and a few strategic conversations. Before she answered, she felt her political savvy coming into play as she carefully watched the Marshal's face. For an Earthling, it was normal to hold such an important military position in the newly formed Galactic Federation. Tara replied in a casual way. She walked away from the lawmakers who were gathered in the corner of the command room and toward the Marrow. As she got closer, several officers rushed by, and Tara had to move out of the way to make room. The distance between them shrunk as the activity around them increased. The command room's view screen showed a huge picture of Troy, an important planet for the Galactic Empire. It had taken years of bloody battles in interstellar space and on planet surfaces for the Galactic Alliance to get to this point. Troy was a very militarized empire whose main goals were aggression and conquest. Their power reached many star systems, and many civilizations came together to form a new, fragile alliance. It wasn't until this alliance was formed that Troy's threat was contained. As for me, I believe in Talos as the master of fate. As Tara stood under the Marshal's command platform and looked out at the world below, the Fourth Fleet slowed down and began to hover in high orbit, entering the planet's orbit. Are they just? Martin asked, not even looking up from the strategic board he was holding. Tara shrugged. That goes beyond mortal judgment, she said, but when she saw the Marshal finally lift his head, she continued. From my point of view, I think they are just elite at this point. Marshal's face softened, but there was no smile to ease the tension. Why is everyone so interested in fate these days? I've started to doubt some of the things my people hold dear. Martin put down his strategic board. Crossing his arms and leaning against the console, he looked like he was thinking. One of the things that was on his mind was, what are our beliefs? Does your God have a name? Tara asked, interested in human culture. This made Marshal smile, but it was too late. What would happen? As he went on, Tara looked confused. His words were not always the most creative. No change in the Marshal's smile. He didn't think they were just talking to you. He stood up and slowly walked to the middle of the command room. It seems like my people are stuck in the same situation over and over again, and our fate lets us make the same mistakes instead of showing us the right way to go. He put his hand on the nearby tactical console and then turned to look at Tara. If that isn't cruel irony, I don't know what is. Tara thought about what speech means. May I offer a different point of view? Tara asked recessively, and the Marshal nodded in agreement. While I'm not an expert on your people, I think you have the wrong idea about how your fate works, Tara said. Oh, Martin was interested in this. He turned to talk to an officer who came up to him and then turned back to Tara and asked, Tara, tell me more. Martin asked, Tara, you think of your fate as shepherds who are supposed to lead you from one green pasture to another and protect you from harm. When they fail to do that, you see them as cold and indifferent. But from what you've said so far, they sound more like parents who are there for you in your darkest moments or letting you find your own way, Martin said. Martin paced around the command room and looked a little worried at first. Tara didn't fully understand what he meant until she listened more carefully. Most of the time, the choices we make should be judged by ourselves, she answered. In the future, historians will not talk about the choices made by fate, but about the choices we make now. Tara waited for the Marshal to answer, but he didn't. His hand tapped the console he was leaning on slowly and rhythmically, as if centuries had passed before he decided to act. John Marshal Jensen Martin yelled, set up a direct line to the top commanders on the ground of this land mass. The communications officer quickly typed in a few commands on the console and said, yes, sir. The Marshal then went back to his command platform. The view screen showed a picture of the senior commander. Hello. My name is Marshal Alec Martin, and I'm from the Galactic Alliance, the Marshal said straight out. I urge you, Senior Commander, to withdraw your forces and begin negotiations for the peaceful surrender of this planet with the diplomatic corps carried by our fleet. He then pointed to Tara, who was standing awkwardly to the side. Hello, Senior Commander, Tara said, bowing formally. I am Tara, she began, but was cut off. The senior commander and other people in the command room were confused by Martin's question. If you want to know my position, Martin asked, ignoring the shocked looks on their faces. The senior commander started to answer, but was cut off. "Oh, I already know where you are." Martin said calmly, "I know you're safe inside the secure building of the judiciary in the capital, far from in Green." The senior commander looked scared, and Tara thought that Martin's words about where he was must be true. "How do you know?" the senior commander asked, but was cut off again. "I just want to know if you are currently facing east," the marshal asked again. The senior commander got more and more angry and nodded his head yes. Before the senior commander could answer, the screen suddenly flashed with a blinding light, and then the connection was cut off. What was that? Tara demanded an explanation, but the marshal didn't listen to her. Instead, he walked back to his command platform and said, "The target is safely located outside the blast radius." The view screen slowly panned out from the forest until the whole copula was visible. Tara watched in astonishment as black smoke filled the command room, something that didn't exist before the conversation with the senior commander began. "We should be able to re-establish communication within 5 minutes after the shockwave dissipates." Martin nodded, and the officer left. Returning to his post, he turned back, finally acknowledging the diplomat that he said calmly is free will. For the next 5 minutes, the command room was silent, with only the marshal humming what seemed to be Song of Hope. What was once green areas and now turned into a mix of brown-black and bright red, indicating fires burning, perhaps even blocking out the sunlight. When the countdown ended, the senior commander appeared again on the view screen. Tara noticed that the senior commander seemed slightly less confident than before. What was that? They asked, their voice dry and emotionless. The marshal smiled. "That was an explosion intended for your level 3 nuclear device." Whatever the senior commander expected, this was definitely not it. "What do you mean, intended for me?" "Just that," Martin replied. "This device was intended to be deployed the moment we discovered your hiding place, to destroy you, your command personnel, and any support structures you still contain." The senior commander accepted this information, then laughed. It was a deep, hollow laugh, one that would usually send shivers through those present, but now sounded powerless. "It seems you missed." They laughed. Martin slowly shook his head. "I wanted it to miss," and the senior commander stopped laughing. Even Tara was surprised by the order the marshal had given. "I wanted you to see that it's not just you, it's everyone on your planet unless you surrender now," the marshal said firmly. The senior commander yelled, "I don't like threats." The marshal stood up and took a few steps forward. "My order is to systematically destroy the entire city until you surrender, or there's no one left alive on this planet." Nobody spoke in the tense command room for what seemed like hours until the senior commander spoke again. "We will lay down our arms. I will return to the capital to await negotiations with your DIP." As the team members hugged and cheered, senior officers tried to bring back order and discipline. Tara felt a hand on her shoulder and looked up to see the marshal standing next to her. "I've tried different choices," he said lightly. "Don't mess it up for me down there." Without waiting for her answer, the marshal left the command room to see if fate still had a cruel sense of humor.